Hi, everybody. Hi, this is Dr. Ken Muich, Stetson Chiropractic Clinic and the Fibromyalgia Wellness Center. We're going to be talking about something, again, I hope that will be interesting to everyone, but especially those that have fibromyalgia and other health problems, because I think it's very, very important you understand what you're facing. We're going to be talking about carbohydrate confusion. Very, very interesting subject that is kind of hot in the news right now. Let me start by giving you a little of my story itself. I think is very, very important. I've always watched as closely as I can because I have this saying that I want to stay healthier than my patients. And yet, when it came to this last year, I decided that I thought I would try something. As of Thanksgiving of 2017, through Easter, it actually turned out to be 6 months. I allowed myself to, shall we say, go off on a tangent and ate whatever I wanted, didn't watch, drank whatever I wanted, and even though I continued exercising, I wanted to see, even at my age, what that might do to my test studies. I've always had very, very good cholesterol, triglycerides, sugar, all the things I think that are very, very important. Like I say, I do exercise regularly. All the things I think that are important to keep me healthier than most of my patients anyway. What I found after 6 months, because then I went in for tests to my physician, when they came back, I thought they'd be higher, but I really didn't expect them to be as high as they actually turned out to be. My triglycerides and cholesterol always had high density lipoproteins and low density lipoproteins. I've always had pretty good sugar levels because I don't add sugar to anything. And there's only been one person in the family that has had type 2 diabetes, and that's questionable. That was years ago when I didn't have any background or information to test whether or not my dad actually had diabetes, and he's been the only one in the family. But anyway, bottom line was that everything was really high. And so within a 6 month period, believe it or not, I mean, I didn't know that crazy, but still, I was really surprised how your body can change. So what I did was I went on a proper carbohydrate-based detoxification. When I say proper, because there are, as we'll find out, carbohydrates that are good and carbohydrates that aren't so good and that cause problems. So what I did was I went on the same thing I put my fibromyalgia and really sick patients on. I put them on a restricted hypoglycemic diet. It's not a starvation diet. Geez, everybody, like I said, hates the word diet. This is a restricted diet where we take the bad things out of people's diet. We take sugar, gluten, trans fatty acids, and dairy out of their diet. For fibromyalgia patients, it's during a detox period in which we want to find out whether or not any of these foods adversely affect them. After about 3 weeks, we add one food every 72 hours. I've gone through this before, but for those people that might be new, I thought I'd go over this again. After the foods have been out of your system for about 2.5, 3 weeks, if you should add them, you're going to have a reaction. And a reaction is something like maybe a headache, maybe fatigue, maybe aches and pains, intestinal problems, so forth and so on. Your body's going through shock. I mean, all of a sudden, many of these foods that are addictive are being re-added again, and you have that reaction. Proper carbohydrates are necessary for a healthy diet. Proper carbohydrates are necessary for a healthy diet. Carbohydrates are the main source of energy for muscles and especially for exercise. And it's the primary source for fuel for the brain and red blood cells. The brain lives on two things, sugar and oxygen. Not sugar like you put in your coffee. We're talking about sugar from carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are a vital energy source for body and for fiber. And again, we're going to go through that a little bit closer. So the carbohydrates themselves, as far as good and bad are concerned, let's take a look at them. You have starchy carbohydrates, such as bread and pasta and potatoes, especially white potatoes, which is my favorite. It's probably what caused more problems than anything. White potatoes. They're very high in carbohydrate index, and I'll go through that in a few moments. Soft drinks, sugar, confectioners like the cookies and cakes and so forth and so on. And then you have, on the other side of the carbohydrate scale, you have vegetables and fruits. How do you like that? All of those are carbohydrates. My goodness, I bet you didn't even consider those as being together. So that's very, very important. Now, listen to what I'm going to have to say. Sugar does not cause diabetes. Sugar does not cause diabetes. Carbohydrates are the only part of the food that directly affects sugar levels. Carbohydrates, sugar in carbohydrates, is the only food that directly affects blood sugar levels. How do you like that? So it's not the sugar itself, okay? But sugar is addictive, and those things like the soft drinks, they have a lot of other side effects in themselves. The reason why I bring all this out is because, again, this adversely affects a lot of people. But a recent study that was just published in Newsweek, the research findings, 609 people over 1 year, and they compared low-fat diet to a low-carbohydrate diet, and they said they were the same as far as weight loss. They didn't get into specifics as far as what type of carbohydrates, starchy or non-starchy, and so forth and so on. So we're not sure about that. And then a Harvard professor comes by and says, yeah, it doesn't make any difference if you cut low your carbohydrates, your protein, or your fat. It doesn't make any difference. You're going to lose weight. I don't think so. There are differences as far as how these things adversely affect your body, along with the fact that there's a new diet craze out there, ketogenic it's called. This thing is really fascinating. Carbohydrates are extremely important for your body and its running, so to speak, energy and so forth. This ketogenic diet reduces your carbohydrates down. How much? A normal amount of carbohydrates per day, per gram, is anywhere from, say, 225 to 250. What they're suggesting on this diet is you go anywhere more, not much more than about 25 grams per day. 25 versus like 225 to 250. Then what it does is it causes fats to break down. So you're going to lose weight. You are. The fats will break down, because there's no carbohydrates that it can call from, okay? However, this diet also calls for really low amounts of protein. And also, because of this diet, you have to exercise. I don't know how they can do this, but my daughter, one of my daughters is on this ketogenic diet. And I find that she doesn't have any other health problems other than she wants to lose weight. So consequently, they have her on a very strenuous exercise program. I mean, we're talking weights and we're talking all sorts of different things that she has to do as far as strenuous exercise. Now, with the low-carb diet, fats break down for fuel, and what they have that's called ketogenesis or ketosis, so to speak. This program is very, very similar to that which was in the 1920s that they used for epileptic children, believe it or not. And so it appears as though somebody stole this idea and is using it. Now, there are side effects from ketosis or ketogenic programs, okay? Fatigue is number one. Bloating is another one. Constipation is another one. For fibromyalgia patients, you don't need any secondary conditions. One of your primary symptoms from fibromyalgia is what? Fatigue, okay? So you want to make sure that I would strongly suggest you don't go on this kind of diet. You may lose some fat, but if you get on the restricted hypoglycemic diet, every one of our patients have lost weight appreciably, and yet they're healthy about it, okay? That's most important thing. There's also some other side effects that the ketogenic program has on it, such as bad breaths and so forth. But you must exercise on this because your muscles go into fasting. In other words, you lose muscle. And so, again, you have to exercise. For fibromyalgia patients, A lot of fibromyalgia patients can't barely get out of a chair and no less exercise. And so consequently, and we're talking strenuous exercise on this program. So low carbohydrates, high fats, you really have, and reduced protein. Low carbohydrates, high fats, reduced protein on this ketogenic diet is not for anybody who has fibromyalgia or for those people that probably have some other health problems. And we know every fibromyalgia patient has secondary health problems, and especially have rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, MS. How are you going to do strenuous exercise, right? Okay, you need to go on healthy things. Okay, so let's take a look at carbohydrates in itself. Carbohydrates at one time, let me think what they called it. They used to call it, let's see. Oh, simple and complex. Sorry about that. They were called simple and complex carbohydrates. A lot of people just kind of blew off what they were. They just said, well, okay, whatever it is, all right, unless you're a scientist. Now they are more specific. They're called low and high glycemic. What they did actually in the studies, and this is years ago already, is they took glucose and put it in a person's system. That's like pure sugar, to find out how fast it absorbs through the body. Then they took each individual food and they did the same thing to compare it to glucose to see how it absorbed through the body. Here's the bottom line. If you're on carbohydrates, what you want to do is you want to make sure that it absorbs slowly through your system. Why? Because the carbohydrates will actually affect the pancreas, which produces the hormone insulin, and the slower the carbohydrates process through your system, the slower the insulin is reduced into your bloodstream. So you have kind of like this waving thing, okay? If you have high glycemic foods, then the pancreas is going to have to blow out a lot of insulin, and you're going to have one of these things, and then come back down. You've seen these things where, yeah, I'm going to have a lot of energy initially, boom, and then also like falling off a rock, okay? Well, for your body's benefits, you want to make sure that it absorbs slowly through your system so you don't exhaust your pancreas. If you get an exhausted pancreas over a period of time, it will lead to diabetes type 2. And research has shown over and over again, once you get diabetes, you have high blood pressure, heart, cardiovascular problems, and a variety of other diseases that the diabetes actually alters. Not only that, but the more severe the diabetes, you may be losing limbs, you may go blind. I'm telling you the truth. Those are the side effects from diabetes. If you want to ask anybody that has diabetes, ask them, and they'll tell you a lot of the side effects. Gangrene sets in and so forth in the most extreme cases. So, again, carbohydrates are the only fuel, okay, that the brain and red blood cells use, okay? And again, like I said, the brain lives on two things, sugar from carbs and oxygen. Okay, you start cutting those off, especially if you go to ketogenic diet, and that's why you have fatigue. I think you probably have also mental fatigue along with just general fatigue. So, carbohydrates equal digestion equals energy if you have a proper form of low glycemic foods in your system. And you also detox along with that. Again, carbohydrates fuel foods, diet high in fat and high in glycemic carbs leads to obesity, which then leads to diabetes and again, the other health problems. Again, ketogenic is one where you have low carbs, high fats, and low protein. My goodness. And you have to exercise. So it's strike 1, 2, 3. Today, I just took something off of the computer, very, very interesting, from Dr. Oz that might add to this. And I'm going to have to read it because this is very, very interesting. This is a study from Lancet that was done, and it says that for those people that are obese, very obese, or obese, you die anywhere from 6 to 8 years earlier than your healthier peers. And you lose around 16 years worth of good quality day-to-day living. Wow. And so I know everybody, the idea is obesity and you want to make sure you're not fat and so forth. There's good ways and bad ways. What I'm trying to do is give you the good ways to do this, okay? Along with that, this goes along with our restricted hypoglycemic diet. Never has it been clearer that arresting and banning the five food felons, Oz calls them the five food felons, grains that aren't 100% whole, like gluten, sugars, syrups, trans fatty acids, saturated fats, okay, sugar, gluten, trans fatty acids, dairy, okay, all of those are fats, okay, not getting physical activity at least 30 minutes a day, and not being able to manage stress, that's what we covered last time, will not allow you to live a normal life. So, what we strongly suggest is a healthy form of taking care of yourself. What are low glycemic foods? Most of the fruits and vegetables are low glycemic. They actually have a range from 0 to 100. And although they have three different breakdowns, I go from 0 to 50 and then 51 to 100. And what I try to do is stay below the 50, anywhere from 0 to 50. It's slower digesting, less insulin produced in your body, and it leads really to weight loss in the long run. So 3/4 of your plate should be good fruits and vegetables, and not a lot of fats and heavy carbs. The other thing I was going to mention is that let's say you're really dying for a piece of cake, and let's say the glycemic index is 80, okay? All right, you can do that, even the studies have shown you can do that, because if the glycemic index is 80, well, you got this up and down. But let's say you fill it up also with a whole bunch of vegetables that say maybe average 20 to 30. So if you take those two together, 80 and 20, that's 100, so that would be 50. So actually, your blood sugar will be like this because you're having other foods in your system that have a lower glycemic level. So you can actually play with this, so you don't have to be stuck with staying away from these high glycemic foods completely. You can average them out. Fascinating. How do you find that? Just go on the website and find out what the glycemic index levels of foods. They'll break it down, not only individual foods, but individual product foods, like from Kellogg's or from various other manufacturers and producers of fruits and vegetables and foods. So you're going to be surprised how some of the foods that you can actually absorb and digest. Somebody said, okay, so what's meat and so forth? Actually, it's zero. The beefs and porks and so forth, but that has to do with fat, okay? That they're not measuring fat, they're measuring the sugar content in those foods. Well, how about alcohol? Actually, it's zero, believe it or not, because most of the sugar is burned off, and so that also transforms into zero. Very fascinating in that respect. You'll find that you can eat certain things that are under 50, the level 50, and other things that can't. But again, if you average them out, okay, that will allow the, again, insulin to be produced in a much more moderate level, so to speak, rather than have those ups and downs and then cause you a lot of additional health problems. I do hope this helped explain to you carbohydrates. There's a lot of wonderful carbohydrates. The restricted hypoglycemic diet. By the way, I have to mention, a hypoglycemic diet has liberal and restricted. Liberal is just if you give most, I'd say most people, Americans, okay, you can go on this diet. You want a strict or liberal? Oh, I'll go on a liberal for sure. Okay. Well, we took that out because usually the patients that come into us are not healthy. And so we really get it restricted. But it's not a starvation type thing. We're just taking all the bad foods out of your system and allowing you to eat really almost as much of the low glycemic carbs that you can. And that's a lot healthier for you. And you're going to lose weight and you're going to be healthier, have more energy. That'll help take care of that fatigue factor and many other of the health problems. I want to thank you so very, very much again for joining. And we're going to save this, so if you want to check Fibro Wellness Center Facebook, please go do so, because this is number 35 now. Yep, number 35. 35 different studies and presentations that we've done. So I do hope that you enjoy this, and maybe you'll find something that I've talked about in the past. I've had patients and possible patients, people that are interested, asking me, okay, since you're such a specialist, go through with us actually how a patient comes into your clinic and you're able to evaluate them and so forth, and what is the treatment protocol in itself. We're going to do that next time. I know I've done it. I've touched on it, done a number of different things. We're going to go from beginning to end, hopefully next time, and let you know exactly what we do for not only fibromyalgia patients, but for those people that do have multiple conditions that aren't fibro, because we find that this protocol that we use is exceptionally successful for most of the fibromyalgia and other patients that we have. When I say mostly, because sometimes secondary conditions, as we've talked about before, get in the way, and we can't help 100%. But the vast majority of patients, we do help. I want to thank you again. Have a wonderful day. Have a great week. And again, we're going to be reviewing the protocol for fibromyalgia patients, and maybe bring in some new information that I have introduced into the protocol. Look forward to seeing you next week, 12:30 p.m. Arizona time, live video. Thank you so very, very much. And thank you for joining in the presentation. Bye-bye now.